We have to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Are we still waiting for a quorum?
Yeah, we're still waiting. We just need one more.
Okay.
I am also expecting Kozlowski and Frerichs, so figured I'd give them a little bit of time.
Great. You're like me. Unlike when you drive to a meeting, meetings are back to back on Zoom. And we seem to are able to cram more into a day with Zoom,
Yep.
which is good and bad.
It's like how computers were going to save us so much time. And now we're in the bathroom at night reading our email before we go to bed. And in the morning, you know, and during a TV commercial, whatever. We're
Right.
always working.
And I feel bad if on Sunday evening I shut it off and somebody said, well, why didn't you get my message last night? Because it's Sunday and I'm taking some time with my family.
Yeah.
And my husband is a little tired of me always checking email. Yeah.
So Bonnie, what tier is Placer County for the
We are
pandemic?
in the red. We are in the purple zone. Oh, I'm sorry. Even though our case rates are like super low, we are in the purple zone.
Yeah, we're in the red, even though we're even under 3.5% on both. But yeah, we're in red.
I like to say we're all in the twilight zone.
There's that too.
Nobody
Yes.
knows what's going on.
But Michael, at least people in Placer County can go to El Dorado County and get their nails done. Because I can't tell you how many friends have told me that they've gone to El Dorado County to get their nails done.
Absolutely, yeah. In our salon, yes.
I have to ask Wendy Thomas for a referral.
You need to get your nails done, Tom?
Pedicure.
We got plenty of places for you to come up to, Tom.
All
I
right.
pass through a lot because I have a son with a cabin up 50 now. So.
Very good.
All right. Well, looks like we might have quorum because we've got Director Kozlowski and Chair Frerichs on the line. So we ready to begin, Renee?
We are ready.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. Welcome to the Monday, August 31st meeting of the SACOG Policy and Innovation Committee. We will begin first with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Renee has got a flag. So if you would please join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's start with our roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. And just as a quick reminder, this committee meeting is being recorded. If you are a member of the public and would like to make a public comment, please do so by pressing raise your hand, or you can hit *9 if you are participating telephonically. Okay, Directors Allard?
Here.
Douglas? Absent. Frerichs?
Here.
Kozlowski?
Here.
Leahy? Absent. Lozano?
Here.
Zaragoza?
Here.
Vice Chair Stallard?
here.
And Chair Gore?
Here. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Next, we have public communication, and this is the opportunity for anyone in the public to address the committee on any item that is not on our agenda. Do we have any public comment? And you can, I think you raise your hand and let our staff know.
Currently, I do not see any public comment.
All right, then we will close public comment and we will move to our first item, which is the consent agenda. Would anybody like to remove the any items from consent?
Stallard moves approval.
Second.
All right,
Kozlowski.
we have a motion and a second. And nobody from the public wanted to remove anything, correct, Renee? Just want to make sure.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Okay. Director Allard,
Aye.
Frericks,
Aye.
Kozlowski,
Aye.
Lozano,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Vice Chair Stallard,
Aye.
and Chair Gore.
Aye. Thank you, Renee. Item 3 is the action is to a contract to extend the big data pilot project. And who is presenting?
I'm going to pull Shenyi in just one moment. There we go.
Great.
Is it a big project or big data?
Big
Or a
cost.
data?
Good morning, committee member.
Morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, dear committee members. With the 2 authorizations from CCOG board in February and November 2018, CCOG has been implementing the big data for transportation planning pilot project on behalf of Caltrans and California Air Resources Board. CCOG holds 2 separate contracts under this project, one with the data developer Replica and one with ARB to manage the project to ensure ARB's access to the data services for 8 quarters. CCOG's contract with the Replica is not adequate to fully execute ARB's contract. To further the scope of work of the contract between ARB and CCOG, ARB has elected to add additional fund, $110,000 to the pilot project. The additional ARB funding was added to the project in the current fiscal year, that's 2020-21 overall work program. CCOG is requesting authorization to accept additional funding from ARB. The amendment contract with CCOG holds with the data developer Replica and extend the work for 1 additional quarter. Thank you for your attention. So I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions from any of the directors about this item? And any questions from the public?
Yeah, just for clarity, this is Kozlowski. This is to extend for 1 calendar quarter the work with
yes.
funding from CARB.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Right, so no, actually no direct funding from SACOG. The money is just coming from CARB.
Yeah, it's the 110s are from CARB.
Great. And any questions from the public, Renee? I don't think we have any.
And currently there are no questions from the public.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board for any other discussion or a motion.
One follow-up question. Is extending this project for the quarter going to interfere with completing any other work that we might have done instead?
Yeah, this is just a natural extension. So currently the contract only provide the data for 7 quarters. So, and then we just follow sequentially extend for 1 quarter. So which will cover September to November 2020.
I guess that's not my question. My question is the staff that are working on this, what would they have been doing otherwise had this not been extended? And is that thing important in some way? And are we foregoing the ability to do that other thing? Maybe that's a question for James, actually.
So this is all contracted work. So this is not taking SACOG staff resources away to work on.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And Director Kozlowski and committee members, and maybe while we have this item in front of you, this is a really important effort. And I don't know if you remember now, way back to, I think it was November 2019 or October 2019, we actually had a workshop on this, the full board in terms of big data. We are very excited about this project. It really is about trying to incorporate a lot of the newer forms of all kinds of data into our ability to do some predictive modeling around traffic congestion, traffic flows. So it's a critical piece. We're kind of very happy that we're partnering with the state on this, the Area Resources Board. So just to sort of connect it to the importance of this, and it's a great question always in terms of, is it going to take away from any other sort of staff time or resources? But it's a critical piece as we keep going forward, and perhaps as the theme of this year, which is the future's never been harder to predict. Nevertheless, we can actually, we think, do a lot more and be a leader using more of the some of the real-time data, the cell phone data, everything we talked about way back when in that workshop. It's good work.
Excellent.
Thank you, James. All right, with that, how about a motion from someone?
I'll move that we recommend, are we recommending approval to the full board? I'll move that we recommend approval to the full board.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and the second was from Saragossa. Do we need a roll call, Renee? Roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Director Zallard?
Yes.
Burks?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Lozano?
Yes.
Saragossa?
Yes.
Vice Chair Stallard?
Yes.
And Chair Gore?
Yes, thank you. All right, item 4 is an information item, which is the Civic Lab program update. Adrienne, good morning.
Good morning, committee members. Happy Monday morning. Today I'm here to provide an update on what we've been doing in Civic Lab. So this is a high-level overview that we're taking to U.S. policy innovation because you're the home committee for this program. So I'm going to start with just a general refresher, and then I'll dive into what we've been doing since our last update to you. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation this morning, but I will be making references to attachments A and B. So chair or committee members, if at any point you would like me to share my screen, those attachments, I'm happy to do that as I'm going through them. So just as a kind of refresher on where we have been and where we are, Civic Lab, of course, is our innovation accelerator. It's really broken down, we think, into 3 big parts. So the first part is, of course, the challenge. So we look at these big regional challenges and see what needs to be solved at a very local level. Like we saw in the first year of the program, something that works for Apple Hill is likely not to work for Sac State or downtown city of Sacramento. So we have these big challenges like how do we address commercial corridor revitalization, how do we innovate mobility, but we really need to focus on the local context and solve for those challenges at a hyper local level. So that's the first part. The second part is really exploring. We explore barriers and opportunities and the challenges, and that's what you're familiar with when we talk about monthly workshops, the expert consultation, the marketplace events with the vendors, the umbrella procurements. And then the third part is piloting a solution. So our pilots, as you're familiar with, are small scale, short term. So that's usually a price tag of around 100 grand per pilot or less. And really the intent of doing this is that we get learnings in a fast turnaround before we make big investments, right? And so if we see success in these pilots, it allows us to help those member jurisdictions or that type of pilot scale up. So to get other types of funding, like what we might see in a funding round. So a pilot might scale and apply for a larger pot of money. And if we're not really seeing success, or if there's hiccups, we take those lessons learned, share them with our other jurisdictions, and that way it helps inform those types of monetary decisions specifically in the future. So I'm going to talk about later in my presentation, but we really hear from the teams consistently that ongoing technical assistance is a fundamental and crucial part of the program. So the work doesn't stop when the workshops end. And so that's kind of leading us to what we've been doing since our last update to you. So if you remember last fall, we brought an update to you to talk about our focus areas in the short term. And those are kind of threefold. They're listed in your main item. So first is designing and implementing the commercial corridors projects from the second year of the program, measuring the projects from the first year of the program on innovative mobility, and seeing how we can continue to build capacity for the region. So those are the three focus areas. I'm going to go over each of these points. I'm going to share some of our learnings, and I'll stop along the way if you have questions or comments about each thing. So in the first kind of bucket, which is designing and launching the commercial corridors projects, we're making slow and steady progress here. So that's what I'm talking about when referencing attachment A. We have a funding schedule that we've been using, or kind of breakdown of the stages of how the commercial corridors projects will be implemented. As you remember, there's 12 project teams from across the region. That was our most recent cohort that graduated last fall. So in attachment A, you'll see 5 of the teams are participating in our Rural Main Streets program. So that's the small technical assistance grants of about $20,000 each, public workshops, designing temporary demonstration projects for street design, working with people like Michelle Reeves. And then right under that, you'll see we have 6 project teams that are teed up to receive REAP funding. So that's the housing related dollars that we're receiving from the state. That will be approximately $100,000 each. And those are teams that had a housing focus throughout their work in the Civic Lab program last year. And so right now we're working with those teams to get their scopes of work finalized, to start selecting vendors from our umbrella procurement. And we're seeing from the teams right now interest in things like infrastructure studies and updating review and development standards. So that's kind of the second block. So some of those teams overlap, right? Some 5 teams in the Rural Main Streets program, 6 teams that are teed up to receive the REAP funding. Some of those overlap, those teams. And so what we're doing is figuring out how we can get funding or implement the remaining teams. And so as you go down attachment A, we have a small pot of mobility funding that could support more of the transportation and activation focused projects. It would be 1 to 3 projects for this small pot of money. So we'll start this fall and winter teeing those teams up. And then of course, we're looking for flexible dollars to implement projects for teams that had more of a retail focus. So we're again making slow but steady progress here. So we hope to have some of the REAP projects on the ground with the next few months. Again, we're kind of finalizing the contracts with them. So I want to stop here and answer any questions or comments you might have about the year 2 commercial corridor teams specifically before I move on to kind of our second focus on evaluation.
Thank you. Any questions from directors? I will note, which I appreciate, is that just last week, our Meta Vista team, our team working on the Meta Vista plan, had a community meeting via Zoom last, I believe, Wednesday, and I'm looking forward to hearing the results of that. But it was terrific to see them reaching out to the community to get input on this project. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and move forward? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So our second focus area that is in your main item is really measuring outcomes. What we brought to you was focusing on measuring the first year projects. But what we really realized is there's kind of 2 areas of measurement, right? The program itself, how do we measure the impact of Civic Lab on our jurisdictions and teams? And then how do we measure the actual projects that come out of the program? And so now I'm going to shift to attachment B. Again, if you'd like me to share my screen, please let me know. I'm going to talk just about some of the highlights. So I'm on the first page of attachment B. Throughout these attachments, I've kind of highlighted key points with little light bulbs to the left of the question.
Adrian,
yes.
Would you actually show that, just because we can pull it up, but maybe others aren't pulling it up on their screen. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me just one moment here. Sorry, I shared the wrong screen here. Katie, is that attachment B that I'm showing?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. I might, Chair, just see if I can zoom in just a smidge here. Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay, so then again, this is attachment B where we're talking about the measurement of the program and the projects itself. So the first page is focused on the program overview. So I'm just going to pull a few highlights out of here. So the first is, you know, from left to right, we go from the first year of the program to the second year, and you see variety in the responses. And I think we chalk this up to the extreme variety and team makeup in the second year of the program. So in the first year, Innovative Mobility that we did in 2018, we saw mostly public sector participants, so our jurisdictions. We had a few nonprofits, we had Sac State, the university, and a little bit of variety. But in the second year of the program on commercial corridors, we had an extreme team makeup. So we had small business owners, we had city managers, we had brewery owners, we had just such a variety of team members there. So when we see a question like, you know, I got support from my boss or executive, essentially, we have to not just consider our member jurisdictions, but also the people who own their own small businesses or property. So I want to just take a moment there to note the difference in makeup from year to year. We see, you know, that there's really a benefit on the ongoing technical assistance, like I mentioned. So that's kind of further down in that first box. But from year to year, we're seeing that after Civic Lab ends, teams want and need more technical assistance. And so I think we're seeing that in programs like Rural Main Streets and things that are complementary to Civic Lab as well. In the second box on the page I am showing right now, we're seeing that Civic Lab is effective, right? Because the dedicated space, the monthly workshops, the unique program structure, the things that are fundamental to Civic Lab itself are really successful and impactful for teams. So we know that Civic Lab itself is successful. Teams like participating in this type of program. However, it's a balancing act, right? Because if you go to the third box down, teams gave us some feedback, which is really interesting, right? They want shorter workshops, more expert panels, fewer workshops. So basically, more content, less time, which is not surprising, especially from our jurisdictions, right? And so we have to, again, think about this, not just from the perspective of our public sector or member jurisdictions, but also the other team members we get on board, right? Those small business owners need a lot of content in a short amount of time. And we have heard that consistently as we brought to you as committees and our teams, right? Our teams, like the Civic Lab program, but it's quite the commitment to participate in something that's 6 or 12 months long. I do want to stop on the bullet that was highlighted that the teams want more expert panels going forward, because in the second year of the program, we had multiple experts every session for 10 months straight. So I think we just can't underscore the value of that enough. And it's a lesson for us going forward. You know, any opportunity we can share expertise, especially with our member jurisdictions, it's essential. And so we heard not just in a workshop environment, but even just sharing recorded webinars is really, really impactful to our project teams or member jurisdictions. So we should and have been incorporating that, not just into Civic Lab, but to other areas as well. So I'm going to shift to the second page. I'm scrolling down now, but I do want to stop for questions on the program evaluation, because I'm now going to shift to the projects from year one. Could I answer any questions or expand more on the program itself and how we measured this?
questions, anyone? All right, keep going.
All right, thanks. Okay, so I'm now on the second page of attachment B. And this is where we start focusing on the evaluation of the projects. So we only have actual projects from the first year of the program, because as you know, the second year of the program, we're developing those projects right now. So the very first question on this breakdown is about, did the project that you launch address the very original challenge that you had in Civic Lab? And so we see a little bit of variation there. It's not 100% response rate. I actually think this is a good thing, right? Because that's the whole point of Civic Lab. The whole impetus of it is iteration, you know, evolution. We change as we go. So sometimes that meant that team members literally switched teams, the focus area shifted, or sometimes teams identified completely new challenges. So I think that's why we're not seeing complete 100% response there, and I think that's okay. And I think it's great to see the little light bulb I have highlighted on the left where we ask, you know, do you as a team consider your project a success? And we see overwhelmingly yes, that the teams did. And so I think that's great information for us to share. However, again, this balancing act, right? Further down the screen, I have highlighted that only 40% of respondents said that they engaged new stakeholders. And outreach is such an essential part of any project, even pilots. So that's a finding we have to take into future iterations of Civic Lab and other programs, because even in a pilot scenario that's shorter term, you're doing things faster, you still need to be engaging with your constituents. So continuing on the project evaluation, I'm now scrolling to page 3. And this is really the data that we have collected from the year 1 project. So really just complementing what I just mentioned. I want to stop here and just highlight that, you know, we have some data points, right? Like the percent of people that are interested in a service based on a survey or amount of trips taken. But of course, we're always thinking about in this program is anything focused on mobility is how we reduce vehicle miles traveled. And if you look just at the very first project, Sacramento State, the autonomous shuttle, for example, you may see it wouldn't have fared well, right? It's an autonomous shuttle that was on campus, that was a circulator, and it was really designed to just gauge sentiment of participants. So it didn't reduce VMT, right? It didn't reduce vehicle trips. However, if you look at the data points, you see the potential is huge, right? A lot of respondents lived within a 10-minute walk of transportation, but they always drive. So good potential there. Many participants said that they would consider taking autonomous shuttles for transportation between light rail and campus. So even in the short term, if it's not an AV, but another type of transportation service, the VMT opportunities in the future are huge. So we can't just look at VMT, right? We have to look at the bigger picture. Are we connecting people in new ways? Are we solving gaps in services? Do we explore new technology? And I think a lot of these pilots did that. And in addition to that, we have to think about some of the other considerations of pilot projects. Some of these were much, much harder to get off the ground than others. Some had really complex contracts or partnerships. All of them worked with private sector vendors, right? So it's not just about VMT or just about the contract, is the whole spectrum of considerations we have when we evaluate the pilots. And so I'm finally, and just to wrap up our evaluation, I'm scrolling to the last page, and then I will stop sharing my screen here. But these are really just our key findings and what we plan to do in terms of next steps for evaluation. So first is we really need to truly define what a pilot project is. For example, does a pilot project always mean something that's an on-the-ground solution like an autonomous vehicle? Or could pilot mean something like policy or programmatic change? A policy change may be less costly, but involve way more technical assistance. So we really need to define what that is to help our teams at the forefront. And it was very apparent from our teams in the second cohort that not having funding identified at the outset, or funding identified or an idea of funding by the time we got to vendor interaction, was a problem. It made interactions with vendors more difficult. It was harder to justify for our team members that are those small nonprofits or business owners to say, I'm dedicating hours every month to participate in this program, but I'm not quite sure what is going to be the outcome. I think it's important we never, promise that there's going to be a huge pot of funding, of course, at the end of the rainbow for Civic Lab teams. But having a more concrete idea of the types of fundings would have helped our teams really interact with vendors more appropriately and just be more set up for the close of the program. And we've heard loud and clear from teams that what I'm sharing with you, this type of data information, is really essential for them. They want to use it for themselves. They want to hear what happened in other projects. They really want to share this information far and wide. So I think that's a good thing. So that's an important lesson to us too, is make sure we're continuously sharing, even if it's not buttoned up with a bow on it, but just learnings as we get them are really essential. Really, Civic Lab doesn't stop at these two cohorts, right? So our third and final point is about how we're building capacity. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just close by saying, we have these key components of Civic Lab we know work, right? Bench procurements, the technical assistance that's really customized, getting that expert content our teams so value, and incorporating that into other types of projects and programs, which we've been doing. And we've kind of evolved our Civic Lab format to mean more than just that 6 to 12 month program that we've had for the past 2 years. So we're about to kick off our Civic Lab housing series. So that's part of our REAP, that housing pot. Online workshops, lots of expert interaction, 1 to 2 hours over 4 workshops, customized technical assistance. So exactly what the teams had asked for, which is more content, less time. And then we're also adapting it to our new mobility sprint, which we brought to you earlier this year as the Mobility Accelerator. We already have 17 applications for that program, focused on transportation changes again, but we're trying to refocus that based on what's happening because of COVID. So again, shortening the time frame, really tightening up the program, because that's what the teams have asked for. So Civic Lab's impactful. We know there's a lot more to do. There is an update on the housing series coming to you. It should be a receive and file, I think, at the board this month. But I'm happy to stop and answer any questions that you might have, or a reference back to a point if you would like to.
Great, thank you very much for the update. Any questions from directors? And anybody from the public want to comment?
We do have a public comment from Jeffrey Tartagia, so I'm going to pull him into the meeting so he can make his comment.
Thank you, Renee.
This is Jeff Tartagia. I believe, Renee, on page 2 of your chart, you have a reference down there of 33% dealing with the of what I believe it was expected or unexpected. It just occurred to me is how many projects were you involved with, and the converse of that 33%? It's the only thing I saw underneath there where you had such a low factor of 33. Most everything else was 67 and 82 to the 100%. Is that clear?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So what Mr. Tartagia is referencing is attachment B on the second page. When we focus on the projects from the first year of the program, there was a question asked, did you discover new ways to deliver a service through the pilot? And that response was 33% said yes, and the other said maybe or no. And so we had 10 total projects through this program, but SACOG funded less than that. So about half of the projects, 5 or 6 of them, participated in this survey. And what we take away from this question, discover new ways to deliver a service, is that it wasn't all of these projects were not the autonomous vehicles that were new flashy types of services. Many of them were just reinventing ways to deliver a service, right? So for example, YCTD launched their microtransit service, Your Ride. So smaller vehicles, microtransit type of service, but still public transit, right? So that's what we're taking away from that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for the question, and actually appreciate that clarification. Anyone else from the public like to make a comment? And it looks like Director Douglas has joined us. Good morning, Ken. All right, so if nothing else, thank you very much for the update. Appreciate the really good work that's being done. And it's really helpful to have the evaluation and the feedback. Sorry, got a little.
I feel that good air you're breathing in Placer County.
It's really bad today, actually. Excuse me. All right, we will move on to the next item. Item 5, which is our advocacy update. Good morning, Christina, if that is you.
Good morning, thank you. Yes, so today is somewhat of a quick update. On the federal side, there's not much to report since we met 3 weeks ago. Talks continue to be stalled in Congress on all of the major pieces of legislation that they need to move forward with when they return in September, including the next coronavirus relief package, as well as the budget and surface transportation reauthorization, both of which expire at the end of next month. So based on the how the coronavirus relief package talks have been going, it is very likely we will see a continuing resolution for both budget and reauthorization to continue existing status quo as they continue to negotiate on all of these major pieces of legislation. So moving on to the state, today is the last day of session for the legislature. After more fits and starts, they should be concluding most of their business by tonight at midnight. They did meet over the weekend. The Senate moved through a number of bills. The Assembly did as well, though not as many. And they have about 160 bills left on their docket to get through today. They did not do a kind of comprehensive revisit of the state budget as many expected. Obviously, this year has been very tumultuous in terms of just process and what the legislature is working on, whether it be the number of bills, how they've chosen to reduce or change their workloads, their processes, and then just communication, right? A lot of times communication happens running into someone in the coffee shop or walking the halls of the Capitol. And with everyone working from home, it's been a lot harder to have just even those basic run-ins and conversations. And so I think when it comes to the state budget, we all assumed, really based on our experiences last time with the recession, that the legislature would have to come back multiple times probably and deal with the budget. As you remember, the tax due date was moved to July 15th. And so I think the expectation was that when we saw the tax receipts come in July, the legislature was going to have to make amendments to the budget that it had passed to meet the constitutional deadline in June. However, those tax receipts came in a little bit higher than expected. And so there really wasn't that need to do any major revisits of the budget. They have passed and they're working on some, modifications here and there, some changes based on policies that they want to move forward with, as well as some cleanup language. So there are a number of budget bills, but nothing major like we expected. And I say all that in terms of Green Means Go and our advocacy work there. We worked very, very closely, in particular with Senator Pan, and he and his staff have been looking for opportunities to put Green Means Go into the state budget. But even though we were looking at using existing funds, just with the situation that the state is facing and the expectation that next year will not be as rosy as this year, there was not an opportunity to move forward with Green Means Go in the budget this year. But we are continuing our work with the task force. We have, I think, trying to remember, I know we just met 3 weeks ago. I don't think much has happened since then. James did present to the task force subcommittee. The item, I believe last time we spoke, the item, we weren't sure exactly where it was in this process of unknowns of this task force. And we do now have confirmation that it has moved to the Secretary of Business, Consumer Services and Housing. She is one of the co-chairs, and it's our understanding that she's reviewing all of the proposals coming out of the subcommittee before passing them along onto the next round, which we believe are the chairs of the committee, the Chief of Staff to the Governor, Ann O'Leary, and Tom Steyer with NextGen. So we are in constant communication with KP, our lobbyist, as well as the Lieutenant Governor's office. She has been a very, very strong advocate for Green Means Go through the task force process. And then they are having constant meetings with the secretary on the status of Green Means Go. And we are working to try to identify funding opportunities that can happen just through the administration so that we can continue to move Green Means Go forward this year. While it won't be obviously the amount of money that we are hoping for, that we look for the budget, we are trying to identify ways to at least get started with some initial funding that the administration can do without the legislature. And so that is it on my update today.
Thank you, Christina. Questions from any of our directors? And any questions from the public?
No, there are no questions from the public.
All right, thank you very much. Quite an unusual year when it comes to advocacy, right?
Bonnie, this is Michael. I do have a question. This might be more of a James question as well. But my question is, I mean, I know, and we knew what this year was going to be like for Green Means Go, and it was going to be incredibly tough, and next year may be even worse. How does that play into our, into our overall strategy of meeting our goals of our 19% reduction if, we don't get these funds in, and which are part of that plan? What's our backup for that? And I know we're not every COG's going to be under the same question, I'm sure, although I don't know if anyone else has this type of request into the legislature, but just kind of, looking down the line as we're going to have to do more with less from the fallout of the pandemic, how we, our long-term planning, I think will probably come to this committee as well.
Christina, do you want to start on that, or do you want me to go?
Sure, I'll start out and just say, we are the only MPO that has this so-called asterisk, so we do have that difference, but obviously, all regions, I think, are in similar situations in terms of an unknown future and what is the outcome and what the outlook is going to be like into the future. And we are circling back internally to talk about next steps with Green Means Go. I think, Green Means Go in this committee, we've always been focused on the advocacy side of it as the Policy and Innovation Committee, but Green Means Go is also about a strategy working with our local partners about accelerating infill development. And obviously key to that is funding to help with that. But we've also been working, having a lot of meetings with, again, our local stakeholders to talk about other ways and opportunities to continue with that policy moving forward. So James, I don't know if you want to add more.
Yeah, Director Saragosa, as Christina mentioned, the asterisk, right? So I think we made a very effective case to the state and the Air Resources Board a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, that to meet a 19% reduction target would require a lot of help and financial resources, and we were willing to be sort of the test bed for this. If we are not successful in securing that, technically speaking, our target goes from 19 to 18, which may not seem like that much, but where the larger point, I think, is we're looking to partner with the state. We want to achieve the greenhouse gas goals and housing goals, but on our terms locally. And I think we've made that effective case. But if we can't get support from the state, I do think that really opens up a major question, especially as we go forward into the next cycle of the SES, where, frankly, I would not be surprised if our target got even tougher to meet.
Thank you. One thing that's coming up from CARB is there's going to be, I believe, 5 seats that are up at the end of this year, including Chair Nichols. My understanding is not returning to that role. I think, we'll have to look at, I'm not sure what the categories are, but we should look as a SACOG board to potentially support a candidate for those positions, someone that can advocate on behalf of our region on that board. And so I'll bring more information back on this, but I do know that those seats are coming up at the end of this year. I could foresee not necessarily a major shift in policy at CARB, but certainly, post Mary Nichols, it's going to be a different board.
I think that's a great point. We've had similar conversations around things like the California Transportation Commission, which we have somebody back there who at least understands our region. So, and we have Supervisor Serna on ARB, but it's always helpful to have more folks who understand, frankly, sort of inland California, right? And then the challenges that we have that I think are very different than the coasts.
Thank you.
And
thanks for that input, Michael. Appreciate that very much. Anybody else on the advocacy? Any other questions for Christina?
I do just want to take a second to thank all the directors and board members so far that have weighed in on this. I know it's a tough thing to come back and say, state budget. We were actually feeling very good back in February. That we thought we had actually a very good game plan, and Christina's been leading this charge, and bringing KP Public Affairs on, I think was a great move. And then, as you all know, everything went upside down. But while this and a nickel will get you a cup of coffee, as they say, I do think that between the bipartisan support we've had in the legislature, we have our entire delegation in support of this. People keep hearing from our local electeds. We had the letter signed by electeds from every single jurisdiction on the SACOG board, but off the SACOG board. And now we have Lieutenant Governor and head of the state building trades, among others, who are looking to us to say, this not only meets our environmental goals and our housing goals, but it's a recovery strategy. Why wouldn't we do this? So I know it's tough when we give you the advocacy updates and things are kind of as bleak as they are, but I will tell you, if our goal here is to increase our profile, get people to understand our unique challenges, both in the Valley and in this region, I do think we've made tremendous progress. And a lot of that is about all of you being engaged.
Good point. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. All right, let's move to other matters. I believe we might have another update, maybe James or you, Chair Frericks.
Superintendent Chair Frericks might give a quick update on the Mega Region Working Group, which Director Allard was also part of on Friday.
Yeah, thank you. No, appreciate that. Yeah, so last Friday, there was a Mega Region Working Group, which is the group that exists between for SACOG, MTC in the Bay Area Metropolitan Transportation Commission, as well as San Joaquin COG, so San Joaquin Council of Governments. Folks may remember that there are 3 or 4 of us from the SACOG board, myself, Directors Allard, Soon, and Saylor, who are the representatives from SACOG that participate in this group. The short version is, and there's basically 3 or 4 elected board members from MTC, as well as San Joaquin COG that participate as well, and then the 3 executive directors and a number of other staff. It was initially kicked off in 2015. Not much happened, frankly, in that time frame, but something that I'm really interested in had this year, especially just communicated to staff, was the need for us to continue to work together with the other 2 MPOs that make up this Northern California mega region. The short version for Friday's meeting is that we have agreed to both come up with a legislative advocacy platform for in terms of the legislature, and sort of prospectively, we've also working on some sort of MOU between the 2 other council of governments, the Bay Area and San Joaquin, as well as us. And we've been doing a lot of other, the staff have been doing a lot of work, particularly in terms of, like, we just did a joint application to the state for some funds as well. So I mean, there's a lot of items sort of underway, but we also brought a updated resolution to the sort of the the working group, basically to bring back to each of the 3 MPO boards to sort of really, it's much more sort of thorough. You know, it's only a resolution, so more thorough, and it'll be brought back to all 3 boards for approval. But again, one of the main thrusts of the conversation was that that there is really a need for us to, you know, maybe work more, instead of just having this working group, but maybe work more diligently across the 3 boards. Again, I referenced this MOU potentially. So that, you know, I'll leave it at that and see if I'm sure James wants to add in as well. But we're gonna, you know, there's just sort of a building on some fundamental building blocks that happened over the course of the past couple of years, but really making some more concrete steps in, you know, in the right direction. I think we're gonna, if we want to sort of work on potentially making our different planning documents sort of line up with each other, we may actually have to have legislation in the legislature to do that. So we, you know, just again, sort of stay tuned. Quick update here, but I'm sure James will have some more items he might want to add in as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucas. James, anything you want to share, or Director Allard, anything that you'd like to add?
Director Allard, anything to add on your end?
I just want to compliment Lucas on taking the lead on this thing. I know it's something that's been in the works for a while and kind of on and off, but he really has driven the agenda and the committee. I don't mean driven the committee, but led the committee. And it's interesting how more and more people are interested in making this more formal and you know, coming to some kind of an agreement, a joint agenda, joint efforts, getting much more involved in the legislature. It's great to see, because I think it will really help SACOG and its efforts moving forward. So thank you, Lucas.
Thanks, John. James, anything else?
Yeah, just to round this out, you know, as Director Ferrix knows, we were, Friday was actually the day we had intended to actually have a big summit in person at UC Davis with, you know, hundreds of people, the administration, our delegations from across all 3 regions, and you know, like everything else, things are a bit upside down. That said, I think there's a remarkable amount, as Directors Ferrix and Allard heard on Friday, belief, passion, and commitment to really kind of knitting our regions together. One thing I'll mention, that our business groups have also taken heed, and they have an MOU that they've signed among GSAC, the Metro Chamber, the Bay Area Council, San Joaquin Partnership, and so the business groups are coming together, which I think would be a potent force, again, around advocacy of the legislature, the administration, if we can do this in partnership with the business community, we're far better off. I don't think I have to explain that to any of you. And again, Director Ferrix mentioned kind of aligning our plan schedules and our planning across borders, which is really important. But I will tell you that we are also, we're stronger together in terms of getting some of our statewide competitive grants and allocations to come to this mega region. Last time around, SB1 competitive grants, you may remember this, our region did really well. We won 2 major congested corridor grants out of a statewide competition. I hate to pit regions against one another, but I'll tell you, LA and Southern California was not happy about that. And they're going to be flexing their muscle both through this cycle and as we go ahead. And I think this alignment in the legislature with the administration to increase our profile and increase our effectiveness across these 3 regions, I think is going to be critical. So again, yeah, kudos to Chair Ferrix for reviving the working group, for pointing us in the right direction, and more to come. And more to come. You will, Chair Ferrix mentioned the resolution, so I think this committee will see that resolution. Again, small steps to begin to strengthen that partnership, but I think this committee will see that again come through next month in October.
Thank you, James. All right, we're at the end of our agenda. Any other matters from our committee to be brought forward? All right, seeing none, we will adjourn. Our next meeting will be for the Policy and Innovation Committee is October 5th. Wow, I can't believe that. All right.
Gonna skip right over September. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh goodness. So
that's about how 2020 is going.
goodness gracious. All right. Well, and we have our next SACOG board meeting, which is what, September? Is that correct? The 17th.
September 17th.
All right. So we will see you all then. Thanks so much, everyone. We're adjourned, and have a good day. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure.
You too, Bonnie.
Thank you so much.